Welcome back to the Pioneers side. Now we're going to go to the baseball side. They were down in Florida over spring break with spring training. They played several games there, much like they do every year, going out and trying to really challenge themselves here in the early season. We're going to take a look and see how they did on that road trip going down to Florida versus several top-notch teams, which really gives themselves that big opportunity. The Pioneers, they would fare pretty decent on this road trip, splitting it off, finishing up with now a record of 7-7. We're bringing our baseball analyst here, Phil Analyst, and Phil. Pioneers, they go out and challenge themselves here early. We see they split with Davenport, split with most of the teams there, and finish up winning 2 of 3. But you see there they lose the last 2 to a number 7 team in the country. But once again, this is a team that's ranked 6th overall coming into the season. Only 500 this far through the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it, Chris. They started off the season challenging themselves, trying to get some good opponents in early. And the big issue we saw at the end there, that 0-2 record against Emory-Riddle, both close games, both games that they were in, but they just could not put together the full package in that one. And the biggest issue for them so far this season has been hitting, which was a concern coming in. They've been struggling at the plate. Right now their stats aren't terrible, but they're a little bit skewed. They won a game 16-0 against Cornerstone. So if you take that game out of the stats, their entire team is really batting around .215 as a unit. That's something that needs to improve as the season goes on if they want to have success.
Yeah, that's something we saw a little bit last year for the Pioneers. Really a team that relies on a lot of pitching, and they've gone out so far losing games 3-2, 2-1. But you talk about the offense, especially with lots of returning players. They did lose Lee Bodner, a couple others, but still they have Javier, Marty, Carrena coming back. What's really the power outage right now for this team?
The biggest problem with them, I think, right now is just trying to get their flow going on offense. Look, this is a team that is still very early in the season. They're in their first couple of weeks. They're playing against teams down south that have been playing a lot of games so far. We go back to their opening weekend against Martin Methodist. That team had already played 16 games going into that game. So it's something that they have to get their early season nerves out of their system. And I think this team's going to be fine. They're coming back home now. They're going to get some home games in. They'll be able to find their rhythm. I think they still have a good chance to make a run here in the conference tournament and further into the regional and national levels.
Now, you mentioned the conference here. This will be the first year for the Pioneers in the KIAC, kind of like similar to the AMC, where the baseball isn't one of the bigger sports of emphasis there. But, Phil, how big is it for the Pioneers to really go out, challenge themselves on the national level here early on, so when they get to the regional and national tournament later on in the season, they're not awestruck of the way some teams can perform?
Yeah, the biggest thing for them, like you said, this conference is not known for its baseball. So the biggest thing is that they need to keep playing at a high level, even against teams that they are blowing out. We see them coming up against Asbury here in their first conference weekend. And this is a team that beat the Pioneers last year 2 times in the conference tournament. Maybe a team that doesn't have the talent that Point Park does, but they're not a team you can take lightly. And so that's going to be the biggest challenge for the Pioneers, because we know they have the talent. But if they start taking these KIAC teams lightly, then they are not going to be prepared come later in the season for the tournament.
Especially with it being a lot of road games, for the Pioneers really can't afford to go on the road with a poor mentality. They really have to go out there with that grind it out to get a win, because they really don't have many home games. Their first weekend home games aren't until April, so they're going to be on the road right now, and they really have to play with that tough mentality.
Yeah, we saw in their schedule the entire month of March, they only have 2 days where they're at home. Now, with playing doubleheaders, that is the equivalent of 4 games, but still 2 days at home in this conference where you're constantly traveling, driving down to Kentucky. It's going to take a lot of mental toughness to pull out wins against teams that right now they're painting a target on the back of this Pioneers team.
Yes, this is a Pioneers team picked 6th overall to begin the NAI polls here at the beginning of the season. They definitely have the talent after coming off a 50-win season last year. Phil, let's look a little bit more in the future. What do you really expect out of this team as the year progresses?
The biggest thing for them, I think, is that they're going to get used to having that target on their back. Last year, the Pioneers were able to sneak up on teams. They came into the season unranked, and we saw them get off to a 28-3 start last season. And to get out to that kind of start, you have to be able to fly a little bit under the radar. We see a lot of the top-ranked teams losing early here because every team circles that game on their schedule now. Just like Point Park last year was circling the games against teams like Madonna, now it's Madonna circling the game against Point Park because they're out for vengeance this season, and we saw them play very well. Everybody's going to be bringing their A game against the Pioneers, and they need to adjust to that.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the target on the back. How's a way for the Pioneers with that target to try to fly under the radar. I mean, it's kind of hard to do when you're a top 10 team, but is there any way they can really try to get themselves to maybe not be the biggest target teams want to try to beat?
Biggest thing is to try to not make any headlines off the field. We saw over the spring break trip, we even saw Twitter start attacking the Pioneers team, different NAIA baseball teams tweeting about Point Park. And so the best thing in that situation is just not respond, fly under the radar, and really just take the high road in those situations, because we saw 3 or 4 players from different teams start sending out tweets about the Pioneers, and everybody played it cool. They didn't really start anything. They need to continue to do that so they can sort of not get those headlines off the field and just let their performance on the field speak for itself.
And then you take a look at here now, going back to the play on the field. Pitching is one of the big things the Pioneers pride themselves on, with many pitchers returning. Losing Mike Tullio, but they still have Sean Clark coming back. They have Nate Spawn. I mentioned Manny Perdomo as well. So the Pioneers definitely, they have their pitching really loaded this season as well, too.
Yeah, the pitching staff this season, I would dare to say, is even better than last year. And right now, they're struggling a little bit. We saw Sean Clark struggle a little bit down on their spring break trip. And we've also seen Nate Spawn. He finished the season last year 8-0. He's now 0-3 to start the season. Very frustrating start for him. But we saw against Embry-Riddle, he pitched a great game. They lost that game 2-1 in 9 innings. And you can't ask for anything more out of your pitcher. I think these guys are going to get things going on the mound and really shut teams down as the season goes on. And then if the hitting can get going, they'll be able to put together a big-time win streak.
Quick prediction before we get a break here, Phil. What do you think the Pioneers are going to do this season? Give me like a quick little synopsis. Are we talking NAIA World Series champs this year?
I think there's a great chance they go back to the World Series again. I mean, in Pittsburgh, they have a good chance to get a winning streak going here, get their rhythm, get their team chemistry back. People forget there's a lot of new guys this season, and it's tough to build up that team chemistry, losing so many players from the World Series team last year. I think that now that they're back, that they'll be back home, especially in April, they'll have a chance to build up that team chemistry, get some wins going, and eventually get on a hot streak going into that regional championship and make it to the World Series.
All right, good stuff there, Phil. Thanks for your time. Baseball, it's coming now. Pioneers are going to try to bring it again like they did last year. Then we're going to take another short commercial break. Be back with Kyle Anthony and break down the softball team.